Tom Sawyer, and I'm here with Joseph Kim, CEO and CEO of Inovio Pharmaceuticals. He was actually the founder of VGX, Viral Genomix Pharmaceuticals, which eventually took over Inovio Biomedical. We're going to start with the early days, back in the VGX time. And let's just step back to the founding of the company. I know you've told me that the company really started, you were a student, University of Pennsylvania?
Right. I started the company with my PhD professor, Professor David Weiner at UPenn Medical School. And that was about 12 years ago. Started as Viral Genomix, or VGX Pharmaceuticals. Grew as a small startup. One employee, grew all the way up to maybe 30 or 35 people. Raised over $40 million across 7-8 years in private capital, almost dollars at a time, but through hard work. Initial products were small molecules based on antivirals, our knowledge of the genomics of viruses and other pathogens, and then it grew into a nice pipeline of small molecules to go after HIV infection and hepatitis C infection.
Dr. Weiner, David, he's a pretty well-known guy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in the HIV field, the odds are you've heard of him. If anybody out there thinks the name sounds familiar, maybe you're not sure. I believe he had a role in the Tom Hanks movie Philadelphia. I'm pretty sure you told me about that, his lab.
Mm-hmm.
He's very famous for HIV research,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe he was the one who started the technology that became one of the early vaccines, one of the first, I want to say it was like third or fourth vaccine that was researched for HIV.
Right. Well, no, I believe, it's first DNA vaccines, companies and products to go into human testing for HIV, received one of the earliest patents for DNA vaccines as a field, as a technology, and so certainly he's considered a pioneer of DNA vaccines, if not the father of the field. He may be a little too young to be called that, but
What are the, I believe, is he the inventor of naked DNA vaccines?
he's one of the inventors.
If you're going to say so, he's one of the people that invented them.
That's right.
I think we could peg that down.
He has the patents, top earliest patents. He has one of the earliest publications in 1993, and so on. So I did my PhD with him at UPenn.
So it was no accident he's one of the people you went to talk to when you're talking about starting a company based on viral genomics. Specifically, you were using VPR protein, what is it?
It's a protein from an HIV virus that actually takes over and controls certain cell functions once the HIV virus infects a person. We wanted to turn the game around and use the viral proteins in the old days to control tumors from growing, even go through a death, controlled death called apoptosis and other things. Certainly it was a technology that was well ahead of its time, and as a company, company's research, we gave it our shot, and we did think that was the best path to get a marketed drug for our company, and we ran into some clinical trials failure with using our small molecule drugs, as you know, in 2005, 2006 timeframe. But all along though, my PhD was in DNA vaccines. David obviously is the world's premier scientist in the field of DNA vaccines. And we had the opportunity to bring in, when we first started the company in 2000, we didn't have the access to patents around DNA vaccines. That was already David's patents were already spoken for to a company, Wyeth, for example. But when the next generation DNA vaccines technology became available, the better and more improved synthetic consensus DNA vaccines technology around 2006-2007 time period, we jumped on that, and as you know, we were able to steer and engineer the company's focus on small molecules and antivirals to this burgeoning new field of DNA vaccine. I became aware and familiar with your company, I think it was 2001 actually, wasn't it? Was it November? Yeah. It's at a symposium put on by MIT, hosted, called the TR100, where they brought what they considered to be the top 100 innovators in technology, and technology encompassed medical technology, obviously information technology, computing. I'm not sure how far out their technology definition went anymore, but they brought the top 100 under the age, was it under age 36 or was it under the age 40? I think it was 35. Under age 35. From the entire world. So it was a pretty good place to meet people like you. Well, it was a class, in my class of 100 innovators included Sergey Brin and Larry Page of Google, along with the founder of PayPal, and other very exciting companies. I was very honored and pleased to be part of that good class of 100 innovators. My business partner, Kim McFarland, and I decided to attend the TR100 so we could essentially meet people like you. We figured, hey, all these people are together in one place. We weren't too smart about a lot of things, but we did realize that many innovators in one place were really too good to pass up. I know for our part, the last company that we were going to invest in, the last field, would be anything in biotechnology, which of course is what we wound up doing. One of the companies I was not interested in was a company called Google. We met you there, and we were very impressed with Joseph having the concept, the VPR concept, that it was just explaining the idea of making drugs from viral proteins, the concept of using them to narrow down focus so that you could use known properties, known proteins, and use those to make drugs. That was something we really liked. And we were very impressed when you explained that to us. And we were also very impressed with you, the background, the education. You have your PhD, and what is it in exactly? Well, PhD is in immunology and biochemical engineering. There you go. At UPenn with David Weiner at UPenn. I also at the same time did an MBA in finance at the Wharton School of Business. Actually, moving back a little bit, I went to work for Merck right after my undergraduate time at MIT. This little known school called MIT, right, which is... And helped to develop Merck's vaccines. I worked on their hepatitis A vaccine and its launch. Worked on their HIV vaccines in research and development. And then they offered to send me to get a PhD at Penn and pay for it, which I gladly took as an opportunity. And that's where I met David Weiner, who ended up becoming my PhD professor, but also my partner in starting what the company that became Inovio Pharmaceuticals, VGX Pharmaceuticals. And it's been a great ride. Certainly having my background and the schooling allowed me to associate with like-minded and diligent folks who have the passion to develop new medicines to save lives, and at the same time make money for our shareholders. And we're all shareholders in Inovio, so those are two endeavors that have really well aligned the path. So we went
as investors, when we were reviewing Inovio, when we were talking to Joseph, his educational background impressed us. I think it would impress anybody, frankly. His idea was very novel. Not that I had any great experience. Inovio was my first non-traditional investment as far as getting an early stage of any company. So it wasn't that my partner and I, either one of us, had vast experience. So we went through a lot of trouble and doing the research. I probably spent, from the time that we met at TR100, before we were even really putting money in, it was 4 or 5 months. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours researching papers that Joseph had written, talking to people at Merck, actually, talked to people at the NIH, trying to make sure we were making a good investment, or if not a guarantee of a good investment, at least that he was a real person with a real company and had a real scientific background, and that took me a lot of work. So these are the reasons that we went forward with an investment. I believe our original investment was, I think it was $250,000. I think we originally meant to put 3. At the time of the TR100, you were trying to raise $1 million.
Absolutely.
It seemed like so much back then.
Yeah, it was hard work. They don't teach you how to raise money at Wharton or MIT, or I had to use the School of Hard Knocks to do that. But we scratched and scrapped, and first couple of years we did raise about $1 million successfully, thanks to early investors like yourself, and then we used all of it, and then we ended up making a lot of progress in our company's product development and so on, and so we ended up, as you know, raising almost a little over $40 million as a private company, and then we're able to grow step by step from a one-person shop to over 30 people at that time as a private company. We acquired manufacturing companies.
Back then, it was mostly VGX 410 Mipriston was really, there were more. I mean, even when I came in, I think there was there 4 or 5 different concepts. I think you even had INDs, I want to say on at least 3, if it wasn't 4 at the time. And you were 2 guys in this office right off the campus of University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
You were using lab space there. Again, these were things that, when we went to the TR100, we didn't want to be involved in biotech. When we left, we were involved in biotech. We did it because of one person, you. The more we looked at you, the more impressive you became. And, people right now look at Inovio as a small biotech. It's not a startup anymore. Would you call it mid-stage?
I would say mid-stage, product stage.
And one of the things I always hear, and other people comment on, is how many products you have in pipeline. Pretty much, that's normal for you. I mean, from 2-man office, you always have a lot going on. You've always been effective in managing that. And again, when we were involved early, from the point we put money in, we used to constantly talk about how much you were able to get from so little money. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of money to us back then too, but in the big scheme of things, when you're putting drugs to market, $1 million is nothing.
Right. Well,
And
Tom,
tell us about Mipriston.
Yeah, Tom, mifepristone was a drug that was previously approved for a different indication. We found that David Weiner, our co-founder, found in his lab and published extensively in medical scientific journals that drug had a added benefit in cell culture in animals in preventing HIV infection by blocking one of the pathways where we call that a pre-integration translocation factor. And it worked really well. We're able to make the drugs under GMP get a huge funding from the NIH to actually test them through their AIDS clinical trials group. Went through a large phase 2 trial because there was such a high hopes and promise from the earlier studies, and we failed to see the final efficacy, but that was a great experience in learning how to develop drugs against such a tough target like the HIV and hepatitis C and others.
And of course, after that we had Hep C, which
Yeah.
we had high hopes for.
Yeah, so Hep C was another target that we wanted to develop the antiviral drugs against. We also failed in that regard. Toughened us up in terms of vetting our technology and making sure our process. Those trials were well run. There's I would say overall drug development is a tough business. It's not making new PDAs or iPhones and launching it in 6 months and so on. It takes many years, and most drugs fail in testing. So
They believe it's, and you can correct me, is it 90% roughly?
probably
Maybe higher.
99%,
Yeah,
I believe
right.
so. But what I did learn is you have to run your trials well. You have to, it's 3 Ps, the way I look at it is people, patents, and products. So people first though. I built the company around the people that I was able to track. David Weiner at UPenn, the father of DNA vaccines and a pioneer in HIV vaccines research. Some of my colleagues, former classmates at Merck and MIT and UPenn were all senior managers in our company and remains to be. And I didn't hire them and bring them on to Inovio because they're my friends. I hired them because they're the best in their field, and it's just a bonus that I can trust them even further because of our other, additional relationship with each of these people.
Well, it's a real advantage of going to the best schools, frankly. I mean, there are very few stupid people at MIT. There really aren't many, maybe not any. Wharton School, other famous graduates. Probably the most famous. Is most famous? Would Trump be the most famous? Wharton
Probably
School of
infamous
Business.
or
Yeah.
famous.
Love or hate Trump.
Yeah.
He's a really bright person. Certainly a great entrepreneur and innovator.
Right. So, and really the extra factor there is the startups and early stage companies. I use the analogy of being in the foxholes. You're battling against the world, you're battling against the tough challenges of developing new medicines, and you're in a foxhole and you want to make sure you can count on the person next to you. And if you have additional layers of trust and understanding beyond the technical expertise and sort of what you see in the CV, I think that's certainly very good. In fact, to this day, I have hired all of my senior executive team personally through my networks of different pharmaceutical companies, especially my old employer Merck and others, or my networks through these schools that you have mentioned. I haven't had to rely on a search firm to hire key executives for Inovio.
Well, that's very good news. So moving on, we had a whole series. You had a whole series. I say we. We were investing back then. We were putting more money in. More failures. It only makes good financial sense to invest in more failure. Again, from our perspective, we were smart enough to understand that the chance of success was low on any given product. We had high hopes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we would sit with David on occasion, David's never positive on anything that I can tell. You're borderline. The only real positive person in the room is me. Oh, it's going to go great. And of course, I'm the least qualified. But in my defense, I was never whining too hard when it went wrong. I was always disappointed and ready for the next thing. Again, from our perspective, we knew no matter what happened, we were invested with the right team of people. We knew that. There was no doubt. And one of the, back then, 03, especially in 03, I know that we were starting to talk about going public with VGX. My partner and I did everything. We actually did physically twist Joseph's arms one day in his office. So let's talk about that period. Things went wrong. We did briefly, I think at one point in 03, you called me up and said, yeah, we're going to go public. And then what happened next?
Well, you know, the IPO market's very fickle. The windows open and close, and really the window has been pretty poor throughout since 2001. Since the September 11th, you know, there hasn't been fantastic IPO market for biotechs. So, you know, and Sarbanes-Oxley's and other additional regulations.
We've had many conversations about Sarbanes-Oxley. Right. It's been a real albatross for anybody going public, and I remember you showing me paperwork that you were having to do compliance and.
Right. So only good benefit of being a public company is a lower cost of capital, and giving the investors an access to liquidity. So giving them an exit out, you know, it's their freedom. So that's why we looked at the public market, not as you know, as a fad or as a sexy thing to do, but really as ways to grow the company. We chose at that point not to do that because that would have been premature, and as we know now, because of the drug stumbles that we had with mifepristone and so on, it would have been much more difficult to really manage the correction of the direction of the company. And as you and I talked about already, it's very you know, it's not very often that a initial startup with a vision and a plan could see a failure and then be able to steer the whole organization away into something even better. And that's the opportunity that we faced in 2005 and 6 time period, where, I mean, let's face it, I published almost 100 papers, scientific papers on DNA vaccines. That was my first love, and obviously David was one of the few who started the field. So it made sense for us to be in it. We just didn't have the business opportunity in 2000, 2001 to do that. You know, as they said, when one door closes, another door could open. So initial failures of our first 2 phase 2 studies allowed us to regroup, and we fortunately had the resources, money, the people, and other technology resources to go with the next generation, second generation DNA vaccines with better delivery. And then we acquired a company that had a right delivery system in Avasys, which was a private Texas-based company. That then came along was a manufacturing facility for plasmids that we were able to utilize.
And Avasys was an animal health company, correct?
And they had their main business was using the DNA technology for veterinary medicine. In fact, because of that acquisition and because of the execution of the licensure of the first DNA vaccines product for Inovio, and only 4th in the world by anyone for animal health, is a product called the Lifetide. It's a injection that reduces infant mortality in piglets, and it's been approved for marketing in Australia and then subsequently in New Zealand. We more recently have made a optimized version of that product, and we have completed testing in the U.S. and our hope is to launch those new formulated product into those countries, as well as in the U.S. and other larger veterinary markets as well.
Something that doesn't seem to be commonly known. Inovio has an animal health division. For many years it really didn't do a whole lot. After, I remember when you called me when you were purchasing Avisis, and my partner and I went out to Texas and we saw the facility, and you know, we wrote a large check, $1 million investment, and used that money to take Lifetide. At the time the target was pigs, using it for large producers, large farm producers. And the concept was also, again, smart. I didn't agree with you. I remember I wanted to do companion animals still. But the concept was a very tiny company trying to market a product. You know, if you could send one guy to 10 or 12 farms and sell millions of doses, that's much more cost efficient than trying to send somebody around to talk to vets, individual vets, and eventually getting out to individual customers that own animals and convince them to use the product. Again, you were trying to get a lot out of a little. I also remember you were having trouble getting it improved in the United States.
So, I mean, as a small company, you have to pick your battles, and we chose Australia. You know, folks before me had those strategies, which I still support. So Australia was great because we had a partner that paid for a lot of the pigs that went into the trials. Australia is a green market. Livestock is very important for their industry. There are many, you know, we're able to clear up the GMO concerns. With Flying Color, there's no GMO concern as far as our product is concerned. And it was a great test market for our product, and certainly to be one of the first 4 veterinary products using DNA plasmids is a great honor, and we look forward to using that as a springboard to expand the optimized product into other countries, including the U.S.